The great obsidian chamber of the High Synod was not silent, though no voice had been raised in cycles. Rather, it vibrated with the subaudible thrum of the station's gravity stabilizers, a low, resonant frequency that the Caraxians felt in their marrow rather than heard with their auditory sensors. It was a sensation of weight, of pressing inevitability, mirroring the crushing realization that had descended upon the Empire's oldest and most decorated strategists. High Counselor Vrex sat at the apex of the crescent table, his chitinous carapace dull under the harsh, cold light of the holographic projectors, his usually vibrant bioluminescent markings dimmed to a somber gray. Before him, suspended in the air like a phantom haunting a graveyard, was the frozen image of the incident, the catalyst that had turned the glorious expansion of the Ascendancy into a sudden, terrified halt. The projection showed the Sol system, a backwater collection of rocks and gas giants that the survey drones had catalogued as inhabited by a Level 1 civilization, fractured, squabbling, industrial, but barely capable of planetary orbit. It was supposed to be a harvest. It was supposed to be a simple annexation, a footnote in the grand history of the Caraxian dominion, a moment where the young Earth was brought into the fold of the civilized galaxy through the benevolence of superior firepower. But the image frozen in the air told a different story, a story that defied physics, logic, and the very martial philosophy upon which the Dominion had been built for 10,000 cycles. Vrex twitched his mandibles, a gesture of profound unease that rippled through the gathered assembly of admirals, diplomats, and scientists. They were all looking at the same thing. The moment the Dominion's flagship, the Starbreaker Asterisk, a vessel the size of a small moon capable of cracking planetary crusts with its kinetic bombardment arrays, had fired upon the third planet. They had attacked with a starship, a pinnacle of engineering that had quelled rebellions and silenced empires, expecting the primitives to cower or burn. Instead, the projection showed the impossible. The beam of coherent plasma enough to boil an ocean had not struck the surface. It had struck a golden, geometric lattice that had materialized from nothingness, a planetary shield of such complexity and density that the sensors of the Starbreaker had failed to comprehend its existence until the moment of impact. And then, the counterstroke. It had not been a weapon of war in the traditional sense, no crude missile or laser. The planet had simply pulsed. A ripple of gravitational distortion, surgical and precise, had reached out from the world they called Earth, bypassed the Starbreaker's void shields, and gently, terrifyingly, dismantled the ship's primary drive core without detonating it. The massive vessel had been left drifting, dead in the water, its crew unharmed but utterly powerless, suspended in the dark by a species that had been playing with stone tools when the Caraxians achieved light speed. "The silence remains unbroken," Admiral Kale murmured, his voice a grinding rasp of humiliated fury. He was the only survivor present from the support fleet that had witnessed the Starbreaker's neutralization. He stood by the viewport, looking out at the swirling nebula that cradled their station, unable to meet Vrex's compound eyes. "They have not responded to our surrender. They have not responded to our threats. They have not responded to our frantic signals of diplomatic immunity. They simply disabled our greatest weapon, left us to drift, and returned to their silence. It has been 3 standard rotations of the galactic arm since the event. The silence is louder than their weapons." Kale's clawed hand gripped the railing until the metal groaned. The tension in the room was thick, a physical pressure that made the air scrubbers work harder to cycle the pheromones of fear that were leaking from the high command. The arrogance that had defined the Caraxian worldview, the belief that the elder races were the shepherds and the younger races the sheep, had been shattered in a single second of golden light. Vrex looked at the tactical map, which showed the Sol system now surrounded by a warning buoy of Caraxian make, marking it as a forbidden zone, but the fear was that the zone would expand, that the young Earth was not young at all, but something ancient pretending to be new. "It is not silence," interjected Laura, the high science minister, her voice trembling slightly as she manipulated the data stream with her slender, multi-jointed fingers. "We have been analyzing the energy signature of the barrier that stopped the Starbreaker the harmonics. They are not consistent with military shielding. They are not designed to deflect. They are designed to absorb asterisk. The energy we fired at them, the output of a dying sun condensed into a beam, was not reflected. It was consumed. They fed on our attack, High Counselor. The readings suggest that the moment we fired, the power grid of their northern hemisphere spiked by 4,000%. We did not attack them, we charged their batteries." A collective gasp, or the alien equivalent, a sudden ceasing of respiratory vents, went through the chamber. To attack an enemy is one thing. To find that your greatest violence is merely fuel for their infrastructure is a realization that unmakes the concept of war. Vrex felt the cold seep deeper into his carapace. If the humans could transmute planetary bombardment into domestic power, what else could they do? What other laws of physics did they treat as mere suggestions? Then we must strike harder, Kale snapped, turning from the window, his warrior instincts flailing against the unknown. We used a single ship, a patrol action. If we assemble the Grand Armada, if we bring the Sun Killers, the Singularity Projectors. No shield can hold against the combined mass of the Dominion. We cannot let a single system humiliate us. If word spreads to the subjugated systems that the Kyrax can be stopped by a single planet of primates, the Empire will fracture within a cycle. We must burn them before they realize they are gods. It was the logic of a cornered beast, the logic that had kept the peace through fear for eons. But Vrex saw the flaw in it immediately, and he saw it in the eyes of the science minister. "And if they absorb that too, Admiral?" Vrex asked softly, his voice echoing in the vast, vaulted ceiling of the chamber. "If we throw the might of the galaxy at them and they simply grow stronger, if we are not fighting a civilization but a mechanism we do not understand, we attacked with a starship because we thought them young. We were wrong. The question is not how to kill them. The question is, why have they not come for us?" As if the universe had been waiting for that specific question, the station's proximity alarms began to wail, not the screeching siren of an invasion, but the deep, mournful toll of a Class Omega event. The holographic table shifted instantly from the replay of the disaster to a live feed of the station's exterior sensors. Space, usually a static void of stars and nebula gas, was distorting. It was not the familiar tear of a warp drive, nor the violent punch of a hyperlane breach. The fabric of reality outside the station was untying itself. It looked as though the darkness was being folded, pleated like fabric, and from within the folds a shape emerged. It was not a warship. It bristled with no guns. It had no armor plating that the sensors could detect. It was a sleek silver ovoid, smooth as a drop of mercury, reflecting the nebula's colors with perfect clarity. It was small, barely larger than a corvette, yet its mass reading was infinite. Sensors screamed in confusion, unable to reconcile the visual size with the gravitational displacement. "It is them," Laura whispered, her face pale. "The signature matches the Sol barrier. They have come." Panic, disciplined but palpable, surged through the room. Guards leveled energy pikes at the heavy blast doors. Admirals shouted orders into comms links that were suddenly dead, filled only with static. The station's weapons array locked onto the small silver ship, but the ship did not raise shields. It did not maneuver. It simply stopped, perfectly still relative to the station's rotation, and then, without a docking tube, without a transmission, without a breach, the blast doors of the high synod chamber began to open. They groaned, the heavy locking mechanism sliding back against their own protocols, overridden by a command code that predated the station's construction. The Kyraxians froze. The codes to this chamber were genetic, keyed to the bloodline of the emperors. No hacker could bypass them. Yet the doors swung wide, revealing the empty corridor beyond. And walking down that corridor, flanked by nothing but the quiet hum of the air recyclers, came three figures. They were bipedal, soft-skinned, unarmored. They wore simple tunics of a dark, woven material that seemed to absorb the light. They carried no weapons. They did not march. They walked with a leisurely, terrifying calm. The central figure, a human male of advanced years with silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold too much depth, stopped at the threshold of the chamber. He looked at the guards, who were trembling, their weapons shaking in their hands. He looked at the council, at the frozen image of the asterisk Starbreaker asterisk on the display. And then he smiled, not a predatory baring of teeth, but a sad, weary expression that frightened Vrex more than any roar. "Peace," the human said. He did not speak into a translator. He did not use a vocal amplifier. His voice simply existed in their minds, translated perfectly into the nuances of the high Kyraxian dialect, complete with the subvocal harmonics of respect and authority. Telepathy, technology, it mattered. Not the effect was absolute. "We apologize for the delay. We had to calibrate our arrival so as not to shatter your station's gravity plating. Your local spacetime is remarkably fragile." The arrogance, or was it simple fact, struck Vrex like a physical blow. The human stepped further into the room, his two companions flanking him, holding tablets of transparent glass. "I am Ambassador Thorn. I represent the Terran Union. We received your invitation. The one delivered by your starship." "Invitation?" Admiral Kale sputtered, stepping forward, his shame overriding his fear. "It was a conquest. It was a display of dominance. We are the Kyraxian Dominion, masters of the Thousand Suns, and we demand—" The human Thorn merely glanced at Kale, It was a fleeting look, but Kale choked on his words. He fell to his knees, clutching his throat, gasping for air. "Please," Thorn said gently, turning his attention back to Vrex. "Do not raise your voice. The resonance in this room is already dangerously high due to your stress levels. We are not here to fight. If we wished to fight, we would have simply allowed the kinetic energy of your attack to return to its source. You would have ceased to exist 3 days ago." Kale gasped, the invisible pressure releasing his throat, and he slumped against the table, wheezing. The demonstration was casual, almost accidental, displaying a mastery over local physics that made the Caraxian technology look like sticks and stones. Vrex rose slowly, his ceremonial robes rustling. He had to salvage some dignity, some semblance of the Empire's grandeur. "You speak of peace," Vrex said, his voice deep and controlled, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Yet you arrive with the power to crush us. You humiliated our fleet. You claim we are fragile. If you are so advanced, why did you hide? Why did you present yourselves as a fractured, primitive world ripe for conquest? Is this a game to you? A trap for the unwary?" The question hung in the air, the crux of the misunderstanding. "Why look weak if you are strong?" Thorn sighed, walking to the holographic table. He reached out a hand, and the image of the asterisk starbreaker dissolved, replaced by a star map of such complexity that the Caraxian computers groaned trying to render it. It showed not just the galaxy, but the filaments of dark matter connecting it to others, the great cosmic web that the Caraxians had only theorized about. "We did not hide," Thorn said softly. "We were asleep. You called us young. In a sense, you are right. The civilization you saw on the surface, the cities, the radio waves, the chemical rockets, that is the surface layer, the new growth, like moss growing on a mountain. We let the moss grow because it is pleasant, it is innocent. We enjoy the innocence of rediscovery." He tapped the table, and the hologram zoomed in on Earth. But it went deeper below the crust, revealing a lattice of machinery, geometric and pulsating, that made up the mantle of the planet. "But the mountain beneath, that is not young. The Earth is not a planet, High Counselor. It is a cradle, and we are its custodians." The implications washed over the council. A cradle, a planetary megastructure disguised as a habitable world. "We attacked a machine," Lyra whispered, her scientific curiosity warring with her terror. "A machine the size of a world." "A machine the size of a history," Thorn corrected. "You attacked the shielding of a hibernation vault. We were resting. We have been resting for an eon, waiting for the turbulence of the galactic formation to settle. We retired from the stage to allow species like yours to grow, to evolve, to have your turn in the sun. We did not wish to impose our order upon you. We wanted to see what you would become without us." He looked around the room, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and disappointment. "What did you become? Conquerors, slavers, a dominion of fear. When your starship fired upon us, it was not an act of war to us. It was an alarm clock. You woke us up. And when we looked at the galaxy we had left to you, we were saddened." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of judgment. The Caraxians, who believed themselves the apex of evolution, were being told they were merely unruly children left unsupervised in a nursery. The shame was sharper than any defeat in battle. But Vrex, ever the politician, saw a sliver of hope or perhaps a new danger. "So you have awoken," Vrex said. "And now do you intend to wipe us out, to clean the nursery?" Thorn shook his head. "We are not gardeners of death, we are preservationists, but your attack, it did more than just wake us. The energy transfer, the sheer magnitude of the impact you initiated, it rang a bell, a loud one." Thorn's expression hardened, losing its softness. The air in the room grew colder. "There is a reason we went to sleep. There is a reason we built the cradle and hid beneath the moss of a pry. Midiv civilization, we were hiding from something that hunts by detecting high-energy civilizations. We thought that by the time we woke, the galaxy would be ready. We thought you would have transcended war, transcended the crude splashing of energy that attracts. Notice." He leaned forward, his hands resting on the obsidian table. "But you are still children playing with fire in a dark forest, and your attack on Earth was a flare gun. They have seen us. They have seen asterisk you asterisk." Shift in the room was palpable. The fear of the humans was instantly replaced by a primal fear of the unknown. The they Thorn spoke of was undefined, but the way he said it, with the gravity of a species that had slept for eons to avoid it, chilled Vrex to the core. "Who?" Vrex asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Voidborn," Thorn said. "Entities of entropy. They do not conquer, they unmake. They dwell in the spaces between galaxies, in the cold dark where physics breaks down. They feed on order. Your empire, with its strict hierarchies, its vast energy grids, its constant expansion, you are a banquet to them. We survived the last cycle by going silent, by becoming small. But now," Thorn gestured to the simulation, "the edges of the galaxy, the dark halo, where the stars thinned out, were pulsing with red markers. They are coming. Your asterisk starbreaker cracked the silence. The reverberation has drawn them in." Admiral Kale stood up, his face flushed. "Lies. This is a trick to make us submit. You invent a boogeyman to force us into an alliance where we are the junior partners. I will not. Silence, fool, Vrex roared, slamming his fist onto the table. The outburst shocked everyone, including Vrex. He turned to Thorn. Show us. If this threat is real, show us the proof. Thorn nodded to one of his companions, who tapped the glass tablet. The holographic display shifted again. It showed a sector of Kyraxian space, the Antares Drift, a region of rich mining colonies. Or rather, it showed what used to be the Antares Drift. The stars were there, but the planets were gray, desaturated. The data stream scrolling beside them showed zero energy output, zero heat, zero life. We lost contact with Antares yesterday, Vrex whispered, realizing the report had been buried in the chaos of the human arrival. They are already here, Thorn said grimly. They do not destroy matter, they drain the energy that binds it. Those planets are now dust held together by habit. Touch them and they will collapse into sand. The Voidborn drink the energy of stars, of cores, of ships, and of living beings. The horror of the revelation settled in. The Kyraxians had been worried about a territorial dispute with a single system while the apocalypse was eating their borders. Can they be stopped? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. If you are as powerful as you seem. Can you stop them? Alone, perhaps, Thorn said, and for the first time he looked unsure. In the ancient days we fought them to a standstill, but at a terrible cost. That is why we built the shields and slept. We hoped they would starve and fade away, but they have waited, and we are not as many as we once were, but we are not alone this time. He looked at Vrex, then at Kale, then at the gathered assembly. You have ships, millions of them. You have warriors. You have a will to survive that is fierce and terrible. We have the science. We have the ancient codes. We have the shields that can hold the line, but we need your fire. We need your fleets to be the hammer to our anvil. It was a proposal of impossible scale, an alliance between the ancient sleepers and the arrogant conquerors. You ask us to fight for you? Kale sneered, though with less conviction. No, Thorn said, his voice ringing like a bell. We ask you to fight asterisk with asterisk us. If you do not, you will be the first course. We can retreat behind our shields again. We can wait another 1,000,000 years, can you? The question hung there, stark and brutal. The humans had an option, hide. The Kyraxians did not. They were exposed. Their vast empire was a target. Vrex looked at the map, at the red tide creeping in from the dark. He looked at the human, this small, soft creature who represented a power that could eat sunbeams. He realized that the starship attack that had started this crisis was the greatest mistake in Kyraxian history, but also, perhaps, its only salvation. If they had not attacked, if they had not woken the humans, the Voidborn would have come anyway, eventually, and found the galaxy asleep and defenseless. The humans were not the enemy. They were the guardians who had been rudely awakened just in time to see the house catch fire. We have no choice, Vrex said, his voice heavy with the burden of 1,000 worlds. The Dominion stands ready, but how do we fight shadows? How do we fight entropy? Thorn smiled again, and this time it was a grim warrior's smile, a smile that showed that beneath the philosopher's robes, the humans were something far more dangerous. We do not fight entropy with weapons, Thorn said. We fight it with creation, with light, your asterisk starbreaker. You used it to destroy. We will show you how to use it to ignite asterisk. We are going to turn every ship in your fleet into a lighthouse. We are going to burn so bright that the shadows have nowhere to hide. The transition from adversaries to allies was not smooth. It was a grinding of gears, a clash of cultures that sparked and flared. The next few weeks were a blur of frenetic activity that transformed the Kyraxian capital station into a nerve center for a war unlike any recorded in the archives. Human engineers, arriving in their silent, silver ships, boarded the great dreadnoughts of the Dominion. They did not dismantle the weapons, they augmented them. They stripped the safety limiters, installed crystalline focusing lenses that hummed with a song that made the Kyraxian crews nauseous, and rewired the warp cores to tap into the zero-point energy of the vacuum itself. The cultural friction was immense. Kyraxian captains, used to barking orders and demanding absolute obedience, found themselves arguing with human technicians who wore no rank insignia and obeyed only the laws of thermodynamics. You cannot route the plasma flow through the living quarters, roared Captain Czar of the heavy cruiser Asterisk Iron Mandate Asterisk. He loomed over a human engineer, a small woman named Alara who was casually pulling cables out of a bulkhead. I'm not routing it through the quarters, I'm routing it through the structural integrity field generators, Alara replied without looking up. If we don't, the moment you fire the new emitter, your ship will fold in on itself like a tin can. The Voidborn project a dampening field. Your standard shields are paper to them. We need to turn the hull itself into a superconductor. It violates Regulation 7 Alpha, Czar insisted. Regulation 7 Alpha assumes you're fighting other ships that obey the rules of gravity, Alara snapped, finally turning to face him. Her eyes were tired, dark circles underneath them. We are fighting things that eat gravity. Do you want to follow regulations or do you want to live? This scene played out across thousands of ships. The humans were chaotic, informal, and terrifyingly efficient. They treated the impossible as a mundane Tuesday. They didn't salute, they nodded. They didn't march, they drifted. But when they worked, metal flowed like water. Vrex watched it all from the High Synod, observing the integration of the two fleets. He saw the humans not as conquerors, but as desperate teachers trying to arm a student before the test began. And he began to understand the humanity that had been hidden. They were not calm because they were peaceful. They were calm because they had panicked a long time ago, processed it, and moved past it. They were operating on a level of existential dread that the Caraxians were only just beginning to taste. The diplomatic front was equally fraught. Thorn remained on the station, coordinating with the council. The debates were endless. The Caraxian strategy was always hold the line, fortify the borders. Thorn argued for aggressive illumination. We cannot defend, Thorn explained to the council, pointing to a swirling vortex on the map. Defense implies a static position. The Voidborn attack the weakness in reality. If we sit still, they will unravel the space beneath us. We must move. We must attack the darkness itself. Attack the darkness? Kale scoffed, though his tone was more respectful now. You speak in riddles. We are going to the Galactic Core, Thorn stated. The room went silent. The Galactic Core was a maelstrom of black holes and radiation, a graveyard of ships. The supermassive black hole at the center. It is the anchor. The Voidborn are trying to destabilize it. If they succeed, the galaxy unwinds. We must go there, and we must feed it. Feed the black hole? Vrex asked, horrified. With light, Thorn said. We are going to use the combined fleet to fire a harmonic resonance pulse into the event horizon. It will cause the accretion disk to flare. A flare that will wash the entire galaxy in a spectrum of radiation that is toxic to the Voidborn. It will be a cleansing fire. But to do it, we have to fly into the mouth of hell. The sheer audacity of the plan silenced the room. It was suicide. It was madness. It was exactly the kind of thing a species that turned a planet into a shield would come up with. And Vrex realized with a sinking heart it was the only plan that had a chance. The journey to the core was a nightmare. The combined fleet, the Armada of the Dawn, as the humans called it, numbered in the tens of thousands. Great jagged Caraxian dreadnoughts flying alongside the sleek, silent silver ovoids of the Terran Union. As they moved deeper into the gravity well of the core, the reality of the enemy became undeniable. They didn't appear on sensors. They appeared as absences. Stars would wink out. Ships on the flank would suddenly stop reporting, their transponders going dead not with a bang but with a whisper. Visual feeds showed shadows moving against the background of stars, shapes that were blacker than black, writhing, tentacled horrors that seemed to consist of smoke and oil. Contact on the port flank, shouted a tactical officer on Vrex's command ship. Sector 4. The Vigilant is gone, gone, Vrex demanded. Destroyed. Erased, High Counselor, the matter, it just dissolved. Hold formation, Thorn's voice cut through the comms, calm and steady. Do not engage individual targets, they are distractions. Keep eyes on the core. If you stop to fight the shadows, you die in the dark. Keep moving. It went against every instinct, to see your comrades vanish and not fire back. But the human ships were leading the charge, their silver hulls glowing with a faint, pulsing light that seemed to repel the shadows. The Voidborn recoiled from the Terran ships, swirling around them like oil and water. They focused on the Caraxian ships, the weaker prey. They are targeting us because we are dim, Kale realized, watching the tactical display. Engineers, increase output to the hull emitters, divert all life support reserves, light the ship up. But the radiation, burn it, Kale roared. The Caraxian ships began to glow, their hulls turning white-hot as the human modifications kicked in. The energy output was blinding. Inside the ships, the heat rose, the air tasted of copper and ozone. But outside, the shadows shrieked, a psychic scream that tore at the minds of the crews and fell back. The light hurt them. They reached the core. The supermassive black hole, Sagittarius A, loomed before them, a terrifying eye of darkness wreathed in a swirling disk of fire. The gravity was immense, threatening to tear the ships apart, but the human anchor fields held the fleet together. Positions, Thorn ordered. The fleet spread out into a massive sphere surrounding the black hole. Charge the resonance arrays, target the event horizon, on my mark. We sing. Sing, Vrex muttered, strapping himself into his command chair as the ship groaned under the gravitational shear. A harmonic pulse, Lyra whispered, understanding dawning on her. It's not a weapon. It's a frequency, the frequency of existence. They are going to shout, I am, into the void. Mark, Thorn said. The fleet fired, not missiles, not lasers, but pure, coherent energy. A beam of white light from 30,000 ships struck the accretion disk of the black hole simultaneously. The energy didn't disappear. It spiraled, caught by the gravity, spinning faster and faster, amplifying with every rotation. The disk began to glow brighter, shifting from red to orange to white to a color that had no name. The black hole, the eater of light, was being force-fed. And then it burped. A wave of energy erupted from the poles of the black hole, a quasar burst of unimaginable power. But it wasn't destructive gamma rays. It was the harmonic frequency the humans had keyed. It swept out across the galaxy, moving faster than light, riding the subspace currents. It passed through the fleet, washing over them. Vrex felt it, a sensation of warmth, of absolute clarity, of being seen asterisk. Where the wave hit the Voidborn, the effect was instant. The shadows didn't just die, they evaporated. They were concepts of entropy, and they could not exist in a medium of pure, structured existence. They shrieked and dissolved, burned away like mist in the morning sun. The red markers on the map began to vanish, swept clean by the galactic pulse. For minutes, the universe was nothing but light. And then, slowly, the brilliance faded. The black hole returned to its slumber, though the accretion disk glowed with a new, steady rhythm. The fleet drifted, battered, hulls scorched, engines fused, but alive. "It is done," Thorn's voice came, sounding incredibly weary. "The signal has been reset. The galaxy is..." Loud again. "They will not return for another eon." The silence that followed was different from the silence in the council chamber weeks ago. It was not the silence of fear, but of awe. The Caraxians looked at their screens, seeing the galaxy intact, seeing the primitive humans who had just orchestrated a cosmic symphony. Vrex unstrapped himself and stood. He looked at Kale, who was staring at his hands, trembling. He looked at Lyra, who was weeping silently over her console. "We attacked them," Vrex whispered. "We attacked them with a starship. We thought they were weak. And because we attacked them," Kale said, his voice breaking, "we are alive." The aftermath was not a return to the status quo. The Caraxian dominion was broken, not by war, but by truth. They could no longer claim to be the masters of the galaxy when they knew the custodians were watching. The human ID that had been revealed was not a rival empire. They were the old guard. They were the ones who held the door shut against the night. The diplomatic ceremony a month later was held on Earth, not in a space station, but on the surface. Vrex stood on a balcony overlooking a city that blended seamlessly with the forest, the golden shield overhead now transparent, letting in the warm, yellow sun. Thorn stood beside him, looking out at the horizon. "You are leaving?" Vrex asked. The Terran ships were gathering in orbit, preparing to depart. "Not leaving," Thorn said. "Returning to the task, we have to repair the damage to the lattice. The pulse drained us. We will need to rest again, not as deeply this time, but we must withdraw." "You trust us?" Vrex asked, surprised. "After everything, you trust us to watch the galaxy while you sleep?" Thorn turned and looked at the alien leader. The insected features were strange, but the spirit behind them was familiar now. "We do not trust you because you are perfect," Thorn said. "We trust you because you have seen the dark. Innocence is dangerous, High Counselor. You are no longer innocent. You know what is out there. You know why the fire must be kept burning." Thorn handed Vrex a small device. It was a simple crystal, pulsing with a faint rhythm. "This is the key to the sensor network. If they come back, if the shadows lengthen, wake us, but try to handle it yourselves next time. We are getting too old for these rude awakenings." There was a flicker of humor in the human's eyes, a touch of the personality that lay beneath the ancient duty. "We will," Vrex promised. "We will be the shield." "Good," Thorn said. "Then the Earth can go back to being young for a while." The human walked away, fading into the garden. Vrex looked up at the sky. He saw the faint glimmer of the Terran fleet vanishing, folding space and slipping back into the hidden places of the universe. He looked at the crystal in his hand. The weight of it was immense, the weight of the galaxy. He turned back to his entourage, to Kale and Lyra. They stood straighter now. They were no longer conquerors. They were guardians in training. "Prepare the fleet," Vrex ordered. "We have patrols to run. We have lights to keep lit." "And if we encounter others?" Kale asked. "Other young races?" Vrex looked at the golden shield above, the technology that had saved them by absorbing their hatred and turning it into light. "We do not conquer," Vrex said, his voice firm. "We protect, and we check the sensors, because we never know when we might be attacking a starship with a stick." The lesson had been learned. The galaxy was vast and dark and full of terrors. But as long as the Alliance held, as long as the memory of the light remained, they would not go quietly into the night. They would burn, they would shine, and they would never, ever underestimate the quiet ones again. The sun set on Earth, painting the sky in hues of purple and gold, a peaceful end to a day that had seen the salvation of all things. Somewhere deep beneath the crust, the great machines slowed their hum, settling into a rhythm of watchful sleep. The humans were resting, but the eyes of the galaxy were finally wide open.